What will happen when a millionaire unexpectedly encounters his pregnant ex-wife working where he's dining with his new girlfriend? His next move leaves everyone speechless. Ethan Harris, a tech millionaire, his life luxurious and power in his hands. After a bitter divorce, he threw himself into work, relishing success and new relationships as if the past had never happened. But fate has a way of forcing people to confront what they try so hard to escape. The upscale restaurant glowed under the warm yellow lights, the gentle sound of a piano filling the air. Ethan sat with his new girlfriend Carla, a stunning woman with an enchanting smile. They clinked glasses, celebrating the $1 million contract they had just signed, another step in Ethan's journey of prosperity. Carla excitedly talked about an upcoming trip to Paris, while Ethan, despite his smile, felt a hollow emptiness creep inside. A quiet unease passed through him, but he pushed it away like he always did with things he didn't want to face. Then, his gaze froze. At the service counter, a familiar figure. Her hair pulled back in a neat bun, her faded uniform, Olivia Parker, his ex-wife. Ethan's heart seemed to stop. It wasn't just the shock of seeing her here, but because her belly was clearly rounded beneath the apron. Olivia Parker was pregnant. A jolt of shock hit Ethan square in the chest. The air in the restaurant suddenly felt suffocating. He couldn't take his eyes off her, but what choked him wasn't the exhaustion etched on Olivia's face. It was the look in her eyes, strong, unyielding, as if she had learned to survive the storm. But Olivia Parker didn't recognize him. The one who noticed was Carla. She frowned, seeing Ethan drift off into distraction. "Ethan, are you okay?" she asked, gently touching his hand. "Yeah, I just thought I saw someone I know." His voice was tight, but Carla wasn't convinced. She glanced over at the service counter where Olivia was standing. "Who is that?" she asked, clearly curious. "No one," Ethan replied quickly, trying to deflect. But inside, a flood of questions rushed in. Who was the father of that baby? How had Olivia ended up like this? When they separated, she had nothing, and he, full of pride and resentment, never looked back. Now guilt cut deep into his mind like a knife. When Olivia finally recognized him, shock was written all over her face. In an instant, a rush of emotions swept through her: dizziness, pain, and things that had never been said. But Olivia Parker quickly turned away, pretending not to see him, going back to work, as if nothing had happened. Ethan couldn't focus anymore. Suddenly, he stood up. "I need to step outside for a minute," he said to Carla, not waiting for a response, striding toward the counter. Curious eyes followed him, but Ethan ignored them all. When he got close enough to call her name, he saw the annoyance on Olivia's face. She tried to avoid him, but Ethan was faster. "Olivia Parker," he called, his voice laced with authority and pain. "We need to talk." She paused, but still didn't look at him. "I'm working, Ethan Harris. This isn't the time." He clenched his fists. "I don't care. This can't wait." He stared at Olivia's belly, his heart pounding. "What's going on here? You're pregnant." For the first time tonight, Olivia Parker actually met his gaze. Her eyes were sharp, filled with anger and resilience, forcing Ethan to instinctively step back. "That's none of your business," she replied coldly. "You lost the right to ask about my life a long time ago." Before he could say anything more, a customer called for Olivia, shattering the tense atmosphere. She didn't waste a second, turning away immediately, leaving Ethan with a whirlwind of emotions he couldn't control. He returned to the table, but Carla could tell something was off. "Are you going to explain what's going on, or should I guess?" She crossed her arms, her eyes betraying a growing frustration. "It's nothing," Ethan lied, but even he knew that was the furthest thing from the truth. Olivia Parker was pregnant, and it was affecting him in ways he couldn't even begin to understand. On his way out of the restaurant, Ethan couldn't shake the image of Olivia Parker from his mind, alone, pregnant, and still facing life with strength. That night, he couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, there she was, pregnant, resilient, fighting life without him by her side. And deep down inside, he felt she was hiding something. The next morning, in his luxurious office at Carter Enterprises, Ethan Harris tried to bury himself in work. But no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't focus. Reports, contracts, millions of dollars scattered across his desk. They all became meaningless. All he could see was Olivia Parker. But what Ethan didn't know was that their encounter was not just a coincidence. It was the beginning of a chain of events that he couldn't have predicted. Secrets, betrayals, and irreversible choices were about to be revealed. Sitting in his office at Carter Enterprises, Ethan gazed out at the towering buildings outside his window. But his mind was haunted by the image of Olivia Parker, exhausted, strong, her pregnant belly clearly visible beneath an old apron. He couldn't wait any longer. He picked up the phone and dialed Max Sullivan, his best friend and personal lawyer. Max Sullivan had always been the one to keep him grounded in tense situations. The phone rang once before Max Sullivan's voice came through, carrying the comfort of someone who'd just finished a tennis match. "Ethan Harris, what's got you sounding so tense?" Ethan Harris gripped the phone tightly. "I need your help." He hesitated. "It's about Olivia Parker." There was a brief silence on the other end. You two haven't spoken in years, have you?" "Yeah. But last night I saw her, working at a restaurant." Ethan Harris took a deep breath. "And Max Sullivan, she's pregnant." Those words felt heavy as they left his mouth like a stone pressing against his chest. But admitting it only made him feel more suffocated. "What?" The surprise was clear in Max Sullivan's voice. "Yeah," Ethan Harris snapped. "And I need to know if the baby is mine." His voice trembled. "If it is, then why is she hiding it from me?" Max Sullivan sighed. "Ethan Harris, you know this can't stay hidden forever, right? Maybe she tried to tell you, but you weren't paying attention." A cold wave washed over Ethan Harris. Max Sullivan was right. After their divorce, he'd cut off all contact with Olivia Parker. But even so, the thought that he had a child he didn't know about made him feel both furious and lost. He took a deep breath. "Can you investigate for me? I need to know how she's living, where she's staying." Ethan Harris, the millionaire, couldn't shake the image of Olivia Parker, his ex-wife, from his mind. He needed to know the truth. "How is she living?" "Is anyone with her?" Ethan Harris asked. On the other end of the line, Max Sullivan hesitated. "You sure about this, Ethan Harris? If you dig into this, you might face things you're not ready for." Ethan Harris gritted his teeth. "I can't ignore it, Max Sullivan. I need to know." Meanwhile, Olivia Parker continued with her life, trying to keep everything the same as before. Working as a waitress in a restaurant had never been the future she envisioned, but now it was all she had. Every day in her pregnancy felt like a silent battle. The baby growing inside her was a reminder of everything she had lost, but also everything she had to protect. And she knew. The appearance of Ethan Harris last night wasn't just a coincidence. After a long shift, Olivia Parker sat on a bench behind the restaurant. The night air was cold but pleasant after the heat of the kitchen. She gently placed her hand on her belly, her gaze distant. This baby was all she had now. But Ethan Harris's return had awakened the fears she'd been trying to bury for so long. "Are you okay?" Chloe Smith, her colleague and her only friend, looked at her with concern. Chloe Smith was a young, kind-hearted girl, always ready to listen. "Yeah, just a little tired." Olivia Parker forced a smile. Chloe Smith studied her closely. You're thinking about him, aren't you? Olivia Parker sighed. There was no use lying. That's Ethan Harris, my ex-husband. Chloe Smith's eyes widened. Is it his baby? Olivia Parker hesitated, the silence hanging thick for a moment, before she nodded softly. Yes. But he doesn't know, and I want to keep it that way. Chloe Smith's brows furrowed with worry. Do you think... Her voice trailed off as she stared at Olivia, a deep concern in her gaze. He won't let it go, you know. Men like Ethan Harris, especially when they're rich and powerful, don't like being left in the dark. Not about something like this. Olivia Parker bit her lip, a long sigh escaping her. I know. But I don't want him involved. He destroyed everything we had, and when I needed him most, he turned his back on me. Chloe Smith gave her shoulder a comforting squeeze. Maybe he's changed. But right now, what matters most is protecting you and the baby. The next day, Ethan Harris received a preliminary report from Max Sullivan. It was brief, but enough to make him feel more unsettled than ever. Olivia Parker was living in a small apartment in a low-income neighborhood, working 2 jobs to make ends meet. There was no indication that she was in a new relationship. Nothing to suggest the child was anyone's but his own. Ethan Harris's blood boiled. Olivia Parker stood still for a moment, her eyes locked onto his. The tension between them was palpable, thick enough to cut through the air. Finally, she spoke, her voice colder than he'd ever heard it. Even if the baby is yours, Ethan Harris, you don't deserve to be a part of its life. Her words hit Ethan like a punch to the chest. You abandoned me when I needed you the most. So why should I trust you now? The weight of her words crashed down on him. I made a mistake, I know that. But that doesn't mean I don't have a right to know if I have a child, Olivia Parker. You can't make this decision alone. She stepped forward, the pain in her face raw and clear. I have to make this decision alone because you didn't leave me with any other choice. Her voice trembled with a mix of anger and hurt. You left me, Ethan Harris. When I needed you, you turned away. I couldn't rely on you then and now. I don't think I can. Ethan Harris couldn't argue. She was right. Before he could say anything more, Chloe Smith stepped in, signaling Olivia Parker to finish up and go home. As Olivia glanced at Ethan one last time, her look said everything words could not. And in that moment, Ethan Harris understood the truth. The child was his, but winning her trust back, that was going to be the hardest fight of his life. Later that night, after the restaurant had closed, Olivia Parker sat on the bench in the small back courtyard. The cold night air cut through her, the wind biting at her skin, but she barely noticed. The shift was over, and all she wanted now was a few minutes of peace before heading back to her tiny apartment. She placed her hand on her stomach, feeling the gentle movements of the baby inside. A wave of love and sorrow washed over her. Chloe Smith appeared holding 2 cups of hot tea. Here, drink this. You need it. Olivia Parker took the cup with a small smile, no matter how tough life got. At least she wasn't completely alone. Was it guilt or anger? Ethan couldn't tell. But just the thought of Olivia struggling alone while he lived his lavish life tore at him. He had to face her, this time with more clarity. That evening, Ethan Harris returned to the restaurant. The shift was nearly over, and Olivia was cleaning the last tables. When she saw him approach, she squinted, shaking her head, clearly irritated by his persistence. What are you doing here, Ethan? Harris, she asked, her voice weary, the frustration impossible to hide. I need to talk to you. His voice was thick with urgency. Olivia Parker, this can't go on any longer. I need to know the truth. He looked straight at her. "The baby." "Is it mine?" Chloe Smith handed Olivia Parker a steaming cup of tea. "Thanks," Olivia replied, offering a weak smile. Chloe sat beside her, her eyes hesitant yet full of concern. "Olivia Parker, I know this is difficult, but you have to tell me. What happened between you and Ethan Harris? Why are you so determined to push him out of your life?" Olivia stared at Chloe, her eyes filled with the pain she had been suppressing for so long. Maybe it was exhaustion, or maybe it was Chloe's gentle patience, but for the first time she felt she had to let it all out. She took a deep breath, her voice shaky but resolute. "I met Ethan Harris when I was at the peak of my career. Back then, I was one of the top marketing strategists at a multinational corporation. I loved my job, and I had achieved everything I'd ever dreamed of. Then I met Ethan Harris. He was charismatic, ambitious, and had big dreams. He told me he needed someone by his side to build a life with. And I believed him." She paused, her gaze drifting into distant memories. "After we got married, everything changed. Ethan Harris quickly rose through the company, and suddenly he was a millionaire. A powerful man surrounded by important people. I was happy for him, but gradually I realized that my life was becoming less and less important. He asked me to quit my job to focus entirely on our family. He said I didn't need to work anymore because he could take care of everything." Chloe furrowed her brow. You gave up your career." For him, Olivia nodded quietly. "Yes. At the time I loved Ethan Harris, and it seemed like the right thing to do. But over time he started to change. His business trips became more frequent." Olivia tightened her grip on the cup, her eyes filling with sadness as the painful memories rushed back. Romantic dinners turned into endless meetings. The nights together became stretches of endless silence. When I mentioned going back to work, Ethan just laughed and said it wasn't necessary, that I should focus on supporting him. She took a deep breath, as though gathering all her strength to speak the most painful truth. And then the betrayals began. Chloe's eyes widened, stunned. "Betrayals, you mean Ethan Harris had someone else?" Olivia nodded, fighting to remain calm. "At first it was just suspicion. He became cold, distant. When he was home, his eyes were always glued to his phone. But everything became clear the day I found his messages." Her voice caught, but she pressed on. "He was texting other women, planning trips, dates, while I was left alone at home. He said awful things about me. That I was useless. That I was just leeching off him, spending his money. That I had no value anymore." Chloe covered her mouth, her eyes brimming with tears at the cruel words. "Oh my God, Olivia. How could you stand it?" Olivia smiled bitterly, but her voice cracked. "I couldn't stand it." She clenched her fists. "One day I confronted Ethan Harris. I told him I knew everything and demanded he respect me. But he just laughed. He said I didn't understand the world. That he was the millionaire, the one who made the money, and if I wasn't happy, the door was always open." Tears threatened to spill, but Olivia swallowed them back. That was the moment I knew our marriage was over. Chloe squeezed Olivia's hand, offering a soft comfort. "Didn't you ever consider asking him for financial support after the divorce?" Olivia shook her head. "I thought about it. But how could I? What he did, it destroyed me." She tightened her grip on the cup, her voice dropping heavy with the anger and frustration she had been holding in for so long. "He let me walk away with nothing. No job, no savings. And I found out I was pregnant just weeks after the divorce." She took another deep breath, her eyes avoiding Chloe's, but unable to hide the pain. My family always supported me, but I didn't want to be a burden to them. I needed to figure out how to support myself. She looked at Chloe, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. This job is the only thing I could do after years of being away from the workforce. I had to swallow my pride, endure the sneers and the looks of contempt. But at least, I had a roof over my head to welcome the child when it was born. And now Ethan Harris suddenly appears, pretending to care, as if he has any right to interfere. He doesn't deserve to be part of this, Chloe Smith. Not after everything he's done. Chloe Smith wrapped her arms around Olivia Parker, feeling the weight of the pain she was carrying. You're stronger than you think, Olivia Parker. But if he keeps pushing, maybe it's time you faced him because of your baby. You need to make sure Ethan Harris never has the power to hurt you again. Olivia Parker nodded slightly, but the mere thought of confronting Ethan Harris made her choke. He had influence power, and he always knew how to manipulate people. If she wanted to protect herself and her baby, she would have to be stronger than ever. Meanwhile, in the luxury apartment of Ethan Harris. Ethan Harris sat quietly in his upscale apartment, Max Sullivan's documents spread out before him on the table. Just thinking about Olivia Parker having to work in a restaurant was something he couldn't accept. Why hadn't she asked for help? Even after their divorce, he still had the means to make sure she would never have to work another day in her life. He had once thought that. But never once had he stopped to think why Olivia Parker didn't want any help from him. He never truly understood that his words and actions had destroyed her trust in him. Ethan Harris knew that if he wanted answers, he would have to face Olivia Parker again. This time he would not accept any evasion or excuses. He wanted the truth, and he wouldn't stop until he got it. That evening, Ethan Harris returned to the restaurant his third time in a row. He knew he was going too far, but he couldn't stop. From the moment he saw Olivia Parker, his ex-wife, struggling in a simple uniform, trying to make a living, he couldn't think of anything else. A millionaire like him while she was waiting tables, this time he needed answers. Why hadn't she come to him? Why had she chosen to go through all of this alone? Olivia Parker saw him the moment he stepped inside. Her stomach tightened. She knew he wouldn't give up easily, but his presence here again made her feel both angry and exhausted. She tried to avoid his gaze, pretending she hadn't seen him. But how could she ignore him? Ethan Harris, a man who always got what he wanted, was heading straight for her. Olivia Parker. His voice was low but firm. We need to talk. She froze, gripping the tray in her hands so tightly, her knuckles turned white. Ethan Harris, I've told you already. I can't do this. Not here. Not now. He stepped closer, his eyes never leaving hers. I'm not leaving without an answer. You can't keep avoiding me. I have a right to know, why did you shut me out of your life? Why did you choose to go through all of this alone? Olivia Parker took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. If you keep pushing like this, I'll lose my job. This is all I have right now. Ethan Harris, please, leave before things get worse. He stared at her, his voice lowering but still laced with dominance. Lose your job, Olivia Parker. You don't need to work here. I can take care of you. Ethan Harris's eyes drilled into hers, disappointment and frustration rising in him. I can take care of the baby. Why didn't you come to me? He stepped closer as if to touch her, but Olivia Parker immediately stepped back, her gaze cold. You don't get it. Her voice tinged with pain. I didn't come to you, Ethan Harris, because I don't trust you. You destroyed everything we had, everything I was. And now you think that just by showing up and throwing money at me, you can fix it all. It doesn't work like that, Ethan Harris. You can't buy back what you lost. Ethan Harris opened his mouth to argue, But at that moment, Chloe Smith appeared, immediately sensing the tension between them. "Olivia Parker, are you okay?" Chloe asked, her eyes wary as she looked at Ethan. "Yeah, I'm fine," Olivia replied quickly, her gaze still locked on Ethan Harris. Chloe Smith understood the situation instantly. She gently placed her hand on Olivia's arm and pulled her away. "Come on, there's a table waiting." A clear excuse to help Olivia get out of this situation. Ethan Harris stood still, watching her leave, his mind a storm of confusion. He knew if he continued to press her now, he would only push her further away. He left the restaurant, but didn't go far. Standing outside, Ethan Harris watched through the large glass window, his gaze fixed on Olivia Parker's every move. She drifted from table to table, her smile strained, her shoulders heavy with exhaustion. It was a stark contrast to the woman he had once loved. Olivia Parker used to be a spark of energy, her eyes alight with dreams of the future. Now she was still strong, but not in the way he remembered her. And in that moment, Ethan realized he was the one who had extinguished the light in her. Leaning against the wall of the restaurant, arms crossed over his chest, his eyes never left her as a whirlwind of thoughts churned in his mind. He shut his eyes, allowing the memories to pull him back to the beginning, the day he first met Olivia Parker. She was a talented marketing strategist at a business event he had sponsored. Confident, sharp, and full of energy, she captured every gaze in the room. But to Ethan, she was the only one who mattered. He had fallen for her quickly, passionately. When they started dating, it felt as if nothing could tear them apart. Olivia Parker was this kind of woman who inspired those around her, ambitious, relentlessly chasing her dreams. Ethan had once believed himself lucky to have her by his side. Then came the wedding day. He could still hear her vows, her eyes sparkling with unshed tears. "I promise to stand by you in good times and bad, to believe in the man you are now and the man you will become." He wondered, how had he let everything fall apart like this? His gaze stayed fixed on Olivia Parker, now cleaning a table, offering a polite smile to a customer. A wave of emotion surged within him, one he hadn't felt in so long. Regret. He had underestimated her, had treated her as just another part of his life, something he could discard when it no longer suited him. But now, as he watched her work, Ethan realized she was not the weak woman he had mocked in those late-night messages with his mistresses. She was resilient, a woman who could face the world alone, carrying the child he didn't even know about. His mind flashed to the other women he had betrayed Olivia for. They had been drawn to his status, his wealth, his power. They wanted the lavish parties, the exotic vacations, the glow of Ethan Harris's name. But none of them truly cared for him. None of them were like Olivia Parker. None of them had ever sacrificed anything for him. Ethan kept his arms folded, his eyes still glued to Olivia Parker through the large window. For the first time in his life, he asked himself, were those betrayals really worth it? He had traded a woman like Olivia Parker, smart, strong, and selfless, for empty things that now seemed meaningless. Inside the restaurant, Olivia Parker still felt Ethan Harris's gaze burning into her. She didn't need to look to know he was still there. Chloe Smith approached, lowering her voice. "He's still out there. Want me to call someone to get rid of him?" Olivia shook her head. "No need. He'll leave soon." Chloe placed a hand on her shoulder, her eyes full of concern. "Are you okay? He really seems to be getting under your skin." Olivia forced a smile, but deep down she too was trying to convince herself. "I'll be fine. He's just stubborn, thinking he can control everything." Ethan Harris stood outside on the sidewalk, waiting until Olivia's shift ended. He watched her leave the restaurant with Chloe Smith, their voices a low murmur between them. He thought about approaching them, but stopped himself. For the first time, a thought crept into his mind. Maybe Olivia Parker was right. Maybe he didn't deserve to be part of her life or the life of the child. He stood still, watching her disappear into the night. In that moment, Ethan Harris felt the weight of his past mistakes pressing down on him. He knew he needed to change. But would there be enough time to fix everything? He had broken. The lavish mansion of Ethan Harris was silent, untouched by the noise of his thoughts. The vast corridors, the minimalist design, everything exuded authority. Yet there was an eerie emptiness to it. The space mirrored the state of its owner perfectly. Ethan sat in his office, a glass of whiskey in hand. But the sharp sting of the alcohol couldn't offer the comfort he sought. He had spent the past few days ruminating over his conversations with Olivia Parker, replaying the memories of their marriage, and questioning decisions that now seemed irreversible. Then a sound broke through his thoughts. The engine of a car stopped in front of the door. Carla. Ethan Harris knew he couldn't delay this conversation any longer. Since the night at the restaurant, he'd been ignoring Carla's messages and calls, unable to pretend everything was fine while his mind was in turmoil. Carla walked into the mansion with determined steps. As usual, she was impeccably dressed, flawless appearance. But the anger and anxiety on her face were unmistakable. When she found Ethan in the office, her arms crossed tightly, eyes sharp, no trace of her usual composure. "Ethan Harris," she began, her voice a mix of anger and hurt. "Explain to me what's going on. Why did you disappear? Why haven't you answered me?" Ethan exhaled sharply, avoiding her gaze. "I'm sorry, Carla, I just got distracted." Distracted. She raised an eyebrow, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "Is that all? You disappear for days, ignore me, and now you offer a half-hearted excuse like that. What's really going on, Ethan?" He hesitated. He knew Carla wasn't someone who could be easily deceived. She was sharp, intelligent, and would never accept a flimsy excuse. Still, he tried to avoid it. "It's just some personal stuff. Things from the past. None of it concerns you." Carla narrowed her eyes, observing him with growing suspicion. "It's about the woman from the restaurant, isn't it?" Her voice turned colder. "I saw the way you looked at her. Who is she, Ethan Harris?" He inhaled deeply, the weight of her question pressing on his chest. Finally, he answered honestly. "She's my ex-wife, Olivia Parker." Carla froze. "My ex-wife." She stared at him as if trying to process the information. "And you didn't think that was important to mention to me?" Ethan clenched his jaw. "This isn't something I wanted to discuss." He ran a hand through his hair, the gesture laced with tension. "Everything between us ended a long time ago. I haven't seen or spoken to Olivia for 6 months. She blocked me out of everything. This has nothing to do with us, Carla. Nothing." Carla let out a bitter laugh. "She's pregnant, Ethan Harris. I'm not blind. I saw her belly. That's your child, isn't it? That's why you're so shaken." Ethan fell silent, and that silence was all Carla needed. She shook her head, her expression one of disappointment. "Did you know all along? Or are you still trying to figure it out?" "Now I get it. You pushed me away because you're obsessed with her, and you don't even know if the baby is yours. Or has she moved on and found another man?" Ethan sighed, his voice strained. "Carla, it's not like that. I don't know if the baby is mine, but if it is, I have to do what's right." Carla laughed bitterly. "Do what's right? What about me, Ethan Harris? You disappeared, no explanation. You left me hanging, ignored my messages, left me with 1,000 unanswered questions." She took a step back, her fists clenched in anger. "After all these years, after everything that's happened now, You suddenly want to be a responsible man." Her eyes sparkled with bitterness. "Where is your responsibility when you betrayed her? Where is your responsibility when you betrayed me?" The words struck Ethan Harris directly. He opened his mouth to protest, but Carla didn't give him the chance. "You're selfish, Ethan Harris. You discard people when they no longer suit you. And now you're only trying to fix things because your conscience is eating you up, not because you actually care." She shook her head, her voice growing sharp. "I don't want to be part of this anymore." She turned and prepared to leave, but Ethan Harris quickly grabbed her arm. "Carla, please don't go." Ethan Harris sighed, his eyes filled with turmoil. "I need time to think. I'm really confused. I don't know what to do." Carla laughed bitterly, pulling her hand away from him. "You're confused." She shook her head, her voice cold. "Well, stay with your confusion then. I'm no longer part of it." She turned and walked out of Ethan Harris's mansion, her heels echoing on the marble floor. Ethan Harris stood alone in the vast, empty room. The silence swallowed him whole. And he knew Carla was right. He was selfish. Everything he did always revolved around what was easiest for him. Carla sat in the car, her eyes fixed straight ahead. She knew she needed to find out the truth. Who was Olivia Parker? What had she truly been through? And why was Ethan Harris so obsessed with her resolute? Carla got out of the car and walked into the restaurant. Today she dressed simply, modestly, trying to blend into the crowd as just another regular customer. It only took a few minutes to spot Olivia Parker. She was moving from table to table, visibly pregnant, holding a tray full of food. Carla watched from afar. Olivia Parker looked exhausted, but there was still a quiet resilience in her, a strength Carla hadn't expected. Finally, she decided to speak up. "You're Olivia Parker, right?" Olivia Parker turned around, her eyes full of surprise. "Yes. How can I help you?" Carla took a deep breath and then spoke directly. "I'm Carla. I'm Ethan Harris's girlfriend." For a moment, Olivia Parker's face tightened, but she remained composed. "So what do you want from me?" Her voice was sharp. Carla looked her in the eye. "I want to understand. I want to know why he's so obsessed with you. And I want to confirm that the baby really is his." Olivia Parker hesitated for a moment, but she had endured enough. "Yes, the baby is his." Carla held her breath, but before she could say anything, Olivia Parker continued, her voice firm. "But that doesn't change anything. I don't want anything from Ethan Harris, and you can tell him stop looking for me." Carla was silent for a moment, watching Olivia Parker. Finally, she spoke, her voice dripping with disdain. "I don't understand how you could tolerate him for so long. He's nothing but a user. He used me just like he used you. And now—" Olivia Parker tried to respond, but Carla didn't wait. She turned and walked out of the restaurant. Moments later, Carla grabbed her phone and sent a message to Ethan Harris. "I went to the restaurant and met your ex-wife. She's pregnant with your child. I can't believe you abandoned a woman like that, especially when she's carrying your baby. I can only imagine what she's been through. You throw people away like they have no worth. I don't want to see you anymore. I'm leaving the city. I hope one day you'll realize you've destroyed everyone who ever loved you." Ethan Harris sat on the couch in his mansion, the light from the desk lamp reflecting on his phone screen. He read every word of Carla's message. Each word hit him like a punch to the chest. For the first time, he truly started to think about the kind of person he was. What had he done? His whole life had been playing with other people's emotions, always putting his own needs, comfort, and selfish desires above everything else. But now the image of Olivia Parker alone, pregnant with his child, working herself to exhaustion, would not leave his mind. She had given up everything for him, and he had betrayed her, mocked her, discarded her, as if she had never mattered. Carla was right. He wanted to fix his mistakes just because he felt guilty. He hadn't really cared about the consequences until they came back to haunt him. Ethan Harris set the phone down, his hands clutching his head. He couldn't keep living like this anymore. Not for Olivia Parker, not for Carla, because he had finally realized that if he kept going like this, he would destroy everyone around him, including himself. The clock on the wall struck nearly midnight. In the empty mansion, only Ethan Harris was left alone with his thoughts. Then finally, he picked up the phone and dialed Max Sullivan. Ethan needed someone to listen, someone who could give him practical advice, someone who could help him find a way out of the mess he had created. He hit Max's number, and it took until the third ring before his best friend's groggy voice answered. "Ethan Harris, what's going on? It's late." Ethan's voice cracked with emotion. "I need you, Max Sullivan." There was a brief silence on the other end. "Are you okay?" Ethan swallowed hard. "No, I'm not okay. Can you come over? This is important." This time Max didn't hesitate. "All right. Give me 20 minutes. 20 minutes later, Max Sullivan arrived at the mansion. He found Ethan sitting in the study, deep in thought on an armchair. A bottle of whiskey, nearly full, sat on the table. But the glass, empty. Ethan wasn't drunk. He was just drained. His face carried the weight of the world on his shoulders. Max pulled out a chair and sat down across from his friend. "All right, Ethan Harris. I'm here. What's going on?" Ethan rubbed his hands across his face, trying to gather his thoughts. Then he sighed, his voice breaking. "I'm broken, Max Sullivan. I thought I've always been like this. But now everything is collapsing at once and I don't know how to fix it." Max leaned forward, his eyes sharp. "Fix what? Spit it out, Ethan Harris. You didn't call me here just to whine." Ethan took a deep breath. "Olivia Parker is pregnant. She works at a restaurant, struggling to survive. And when I saw her like that, I realized just how terribly I've treated her. I betrayed her, humiliated her, abandoned her when she needed me most." He paused, his eyes vacant. Then he continued, his voice bitter. "And now Carla's gone too. She's figured out just how selfish I am." Max Sullivan stayed silent, letting Ethan spill everything out. "I've become the type of person who only plays with other people's feelings." Ethan exhaled, his eyes blank. "I used others to make myself feel better, to feed my ego. And when they were no longer convenient, I tossed them aside. The worst part is, it didn't make me happy. In fact, it made me feel emptier than before." Max Sullivan sat quietly for a moment, then spoke slowly. "Realizing that is a big step, but that's not enough. Ethan Harris, what are you going to do about it?" Ethan leaned his head back against the chair, his voice barely a whisper. "I don't know. I feel stuck in a loop. Every time I try to change, I end up doing something worse. How do I change who I am? How do I fix all of this?" "Max," Sullivan sighed, choosing his words carefully. "Ethan Harris, change isn't something that happens overnight. It's a process. And it starts with honesty with yourself and with others. You need to admit your mistakes, but more importantly, you need to act to fix them. That doesn't mean everyone will forgive you right away, but it means you're starting to become someone worthy of forgiveness." Ethan listened intently until the most haunting question finally slipped out. "I've hurt her too much. She doesn't trust me anymore. How can I make it up to her? How can I get close to someone I've destroyed like this? She doesn't want to see me. Max Sullivan locked eyes with him, serious. Start with the small things. Don't try to fix everything at once because that'll just make you look fake and selfish. Show her through your actions that you're trying to change, not to redeem yourself, not to ease your guilt, but because you truly want to become a better person. Ethan sat quietly, shaking his head slightly, trying to absorb Max's words. Ethan lowered his gaze, his voice thick with emotion. Carla. She left because she realized what kind of man I am. Ethan Harris sat back, his voice low, almost inaudible. I think I used her, Max Sullivan. I wanted someone to help me forget the chaos of my life. But in the end, I hurt her. Max Sullivan crossed his arms and fixed his gaze on Ethan with an intensity that made the room feel smaller. Carla is an adult Ethan Harris. She made the decision to leave because she saw something in you she couldn't accept. That's a hard truth to swallow, but maybe she did you a favor. Maybe you need this time alone with no distractions to really think things through. Ethan sat in silence for what seemed like forever. Finally, he looked up at Max, his eyes tired, but with a spark of determination. I want to change, Max Sullivan. I want to be a better person. I can't keep living like this anymore. Max nodded slowly. Then start now. Don't wait for tomorrow. Don't wait for someone to push you forward. Start right now. And remember this, real change isn't easy. It'll hurt. But in the end, it'll be worth it. After the conversation, Ethan felt a strange sense of relief. It wasn't a solution to all his problems, but it was a beginning. He knew the road ahead would be tough. Maybe he'd never earn Olivia Parker's trust back. Maybe he'd never be able to undo the harm he'd caused. But he had to try. Not for Olivia Parker, not for Carla, but for himself. Max Sullivan left and Ethan sat alone in his office holding an old photograph, his wedding picture with Olivia Parker. She looked radiant that day, hopeful, full of love. He wondered, would there ever come a time when he could reclaim even a fraction of that connection? For now, all he knew was this: he couldn't keep being the man he once was. Ethan Harris understood that he had to rebuild his life from scratch. And this time, he had to do it right. That night, he made a decision. He would start from where everything fell apart. He needed to face the man he had become. And more than anything, he needed to accept the wounds he had inflicted. In his mind, Olivia Parker was the starting point. She wasn't just the biggest mistake of his life, she was also the greatest opportunity for redemption. But before he could try to get close to her, he knew he had to confront his own flaws first. For the first time in days, Ethan Harris woke up without feeling weighed down by the world. He picked up his phone and did something he had never done before. He scheduled an appointment with a therapist. Ethan Harris, the millionaire, who once believed money could solve everything, finally realized that real change couldn't come from empty promises. It required a deep understanding of himself. Ethan began reconnecting with the parts of his life he had neglected for years. He faced the painful memories, the darkest mistakes, the choices that had turned him into a selfish, numb man. A man he no longer wanted to be. With a fresh mindset, Ethan decided it was time to take the next step. He needed to talk to Olivia Parker. But not in a restaurant. He knew barging into her workplace would only pressure her further. He needed to do this in a place where she had control. He opened his phone and typed a short but sincere message. Olivia Parker. I know you have no reason to trust me, but I want to meet you honestly and face to face. This time, I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just want to show you that I'm truly trying to change. Ethan Carter hit send. I don't want to force anything. I just want a chance to explain and listen to you. If you agree, let me know when and where would be convenient for you. If not, I'll respect your decision. He didn't expect an immediate response, and it didn't come immediately. The whole day, Ethan Harris tried to keep himself busy, but the anxiety gnawed at him bit by bit. The thought that Olivia Parker might ignore or reject him unsettled him more than ever. But part of him knew this was a possibility he had to accept. She'd read it for the fourth time. Sitting on the small couch in her modest apartment, she still didn't know how to respond. The message had come as a surprise. Her first instinct was to refuse it outright. But something inside her hesitated. "Do you think he deserves a chance?" Olivia Parker asked, her eyes still fixed on the phone screen. Chloe Smith, sitting across the room casually eating popcorn, shrugged. "I think he deserves a shot at hearing some honest words," she said, frowning. "But honestly, only you can decide that. He's a jerk, but maybe he's trying to change now. Just don't let him manipulate you again." Olivia Parker sighed. The thought of giving Ethan Harris any control over her life again sickened her. But at the same time, a small part of her wanted to face him, not to hurt him, but to let go of the pain she had been carrying for far too long. Finally, she typed a short message. "Tomorrow, 3 p.m. at the park near my office. Don't be late." Ethan Harris was there before the scheduled time. For the first time in years, he felt nervous. Sitting on a bench in the park, his heart pounded harder than he wanted to admit. He looked around, observing the families playing, the kids running around, the couples strolling hand in hand. The scene reminded him of what he had lost, or perhaps what he never had the courage to build. When Olivia Parker arrived, he immediately stood up. She looked tired, but her presence exuded a strength that made him feel smaller than ever. "Thanks for coming," Ethan Harris said, trying to keep his voice steady. Olivia Parker sat down, her eyes locking onto his. "I'm here because I want things to be clear," she replied, folding her arms. "Speak quickly. I don't have time for small talk." Ethan Harris nodded, fighting to control the rising tide of nerves. "I just want to start by apologizing. I'm sorry for everything. For what I did to our marriage. For lying to you. For making you suffer. For not being there when you needed me most. I know an apology isn't enough, but I have to say this." Olivia Parker remained silent, her gaze unwavering, her expression unreadable. "You destroyed me, Ethan Harris." She finally spoke. "You took everything I had. I lost my career, my pride, my faith in people, but I kept going because I had no other choice." "I know," Ethan Harris said, his voice sincere. "And you're stronger than anything I could ever imagine. Seeing you at that restaurant fighting with yourself made me realize how selfish I've been. I'm not here to ask you for forgiveness or to fix things between us. I'm here because I want to change, and you've shown me just how much I need to change." Olivia Parker studied him for a long moment, silent. "I don't know if I can trust you, Ethan Harris. You've always been good with words, but real change isn't that simple." Ethan Harris nodded, feeling like each word he spoke was crucial to rebuilding trust. "I know, and I'm not asking you to trust me right now, but I will prove with my actions that I've changed." Olivia Parker looked at him, a sudden flash of anger crossing her eyes. "I don't need you in my life, Ethan Harris, but if you want to be the father of the child, I'll give you a chance." Her words took Ethan Harris by surprise. He'd thought she would refuse immediately, but that small opening made him feel a sense of relief. Thank you, Olivia Parker. And please let me know if you need anything. I won't interfere, but I want to be ready when you do. Olivia Parker didn't answer. She just nodded, then turned and walked away. Ethan Harris sat there long after she disappeared, feeling both relieved and burdened. He knew this was just the first step on a long journey ahead, and that the road would not be easy. But for the first time in years, he didn't feel solely guilty or regretful. He could feel the change, however small, starting to take root within him. In the days that followed, Ethan Harris found himself no longer consumed by million-dollar contracts or the lavish lifestyle that once defined him. His focus shifted from maintaining an image or trying to please others to something far more important, changing himself, becoming someone he could respect. This journey wasn't about proving anything to Olivia Parker or anyone else. It was about becoming the man he could truly be proud of, worthy of the life and relationships that mattered. Ethan kept his distance from Olivia, honoring the promise he'd made to respect her space. But even as he gave her the room she asked for, his mind never stopped replaying the words he'd spoken in their last conversation. One night, as he scrolled through old emails and messages he had ignored for years, something caught his eye. A letter. A letter from Olivia written during the most difficult point in their marriage. The letter she never sent. He found it buried among the divorce papers. Her handwriting was unmistakable, and as he began to read, a lump formed in his throat. Ethan Harris. I still remember the man I loved. He was kind, decisive, and always made me feel like together we could conquer the world. But that man is gone, replaced by someone who makes me feel small, useless, and unwanted. I tried for so long to understand where I went wrong, but maybe it's something I can't fix. Maybe you just never wanted a partner. Maybe you only wanted someone to look up to while you chased your dreams. And I did that, but now I see that I lost sight of my own dreams in the process. I'm writing this letter to tell you that I still believe in the man you could become, but I can't continue being the person you want me to be. I deserve more than this, and you deserve someone who doesn't have to sacrifice everything to follow you. I hope one day you'll understand what you've lost, and I hope that day isn't too late for you to change. The letter hit him like a punch to the gut. Each sentence was a sharp, precise blow, echoing with the guilt he could no longer ignore. Every word felt like a reminder of the dreams he'd trampled, the hopes he'd crushed, the losses he'd never acknowledged. The slow-motion reel of their past unspooled before him, his mistakes, her pain, all laid bare. But Ethan didn't turn away. He committed to facing the past head-on. Every day he asked himself whether he could become the man Olivia Parker deserved. Despite her continued distance, despite her silence, he refused to give up. He started buying things for their child, clothes, toys, small accessories he thought might be useful. Instead of handing them to Olivia himself, he had the driver leave them at her doorstep. Each package came with a brief note. No strings attached, no expectations. I hope this helps a little. Take care. Ethan Harris. Olivia thanked him, but nothing changed. She didn't open up. Accepting the help was practical, but letting him back into her life was another matter entirely. She had been hurt too deeply, and the fear of betrayal still gripped her heart. Yet Ethan kept trying. Every day he messaged, "How are you today? If you need anything, don't hesitate to ask." He checked on her health, though she never replied. Sometimes he stood across the street just watching her work at the restaurant, the place she had dedicated herself to. He didn't want to disturb her, only to know that she was okay. 2 months away from the baby's due date, Ethan felt the weight of anxiety and pressure mounting. Fatherhood had never crossed his mind, but now seeing Olivia preparing for a new life, he knew he would be part of that child's life, whether or not he and Olivia could ever repair what had been broken. He stood across the street watching Olivia move slowly, her pregnant body clearly feeling the toll of her heavy load. Chloe Smith, as always, noticed his presence immediately. "He's out there again," Chloe said one evening. Olivia sighed, rubbing her belly as she leaned back in her chair. "I know," she answered, her eyes still fixed on the papers in front of her. "Are you going to talk to him?" Chloe's voice was laced with curiosity. "No. He made his choice and I made mine." Olivia replied, though a part of her couldn't help but wonder if she was being fair to Ethan. At nearly 9 months pregnant, Olivia Parker began to feel the persistent pain, the kind that made working at the restaurant nearly impossible. She realized it was time to stop. The decision wasn't easy, she relied on that job, but her body simply couldn't take any more. Ethan Harris heard the news from Chloe Smith, who called him in a panic. "She doesn't want you to know, but she's in a lot of pain. She needs help right now, Ethan Harris. If you've really changed, show her you care." That very day, Ethan offered to take Olivia to the doctor. Olivia hesitated, but seeing her condition and Chloe's insistence, she finally agreed. The doctor's appointment became a turning point for Ethan. Sitting next to Olivia, he heard their baby's heartbeat for the first time through the ultrasound machine. The rapid, powerful rhythm filled the room, a force of life he'd never felt before. He looked at the screen and saw their child, his son. Tears welled up unbidden. "That's him," Ethan said. His voice breaking, his eyes locked on Olivia's. She nodded, tears streaming down her face, but she didn't say anything. Seeing Ethan so vulnerable unsettled Olivia deeply. She didn't know how to process these emotions. But in that moment, she couldn't deny that something in him had changed, and it made her reconsider everything. Ethan drove Olivia home with the silence between them heavy with unspoken thoughts. When they arrived, he hesitated, then asked quietly, Can I see the baby's room?" Olivia thought for a moment, then nodded. "Of course, come in." She led him into the small room she'd prepared, simple but warm and welcoming. Soft, light green walls, a modest crib beside a rocking chair. Ethan stepped into the room, standing still for a moment, overwhelmed with emotion. Tears sprang to his eyes before he could stop them. Gently, he placed his hand on the crib, then on the rocking chair, and looked at Olivia. "You did all this by yourself." His voice cracked, eyes full of emotion. "I'm sorry for everything. You're amazing, Olivia. I don't deserve any of this. But I want to be part of our child's life. I want to be a real father." Olivia felt her own tears well up. They stood so close, and for the first time in a long while she saw Ethan, the man she had once loved deeply. The feelings she thought she'd buried resurfaced, and before she knew it, she was in his arms. Ethan held her gently, as if afraid she would break in his embrace, as if she were something precious and fragile. The next day, Olivia went into labor. Ethan received a call from Chloe and rushed to the hospital, his heart pounding with worry and excitement. When he arrived, Olivia was already in the thick of contractions, surrounded by nurses. He took her hand, determined to be her support during this intense time. "I'm here," Ethan said, his gaze steady, comforting her with his presence. After hours of struggle, the baby's cry pierced the air, filling the room. Ethan was nearly breathless at the miracle unfolding before him. The doctor held the baby, a boy, and gently placed him in Olivia's arms. She gazed at the child, tears streaming down her cheeks, and Ethan felt his heart break and heal all at once. When Olivia handed the baby to him, Ethan cradled the child as if he were holding the world. "Hello, little one," he whispered, his voice shaking. "I'm your father." He looked at Olivia, still holding the baby. "Olivia, I'm so sorry for everything. You're the most incredible woman I've ever known, and I should never have hurt you. I love you. I've always loved you, and I want to spend the rest of my life proving it to you." Olivia cried, looking at Ethan with a mix of emotions. She knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but in that moment with their baby in her arms, she felt a flicker of hope. "I believe in second chances, Ethan Harris," she said softly. "But you'll have to work really hard." Ethan Harris nodded, tears streaming down his face. "I will. I promise." And in that small hospital room, they began to rebuild what had once seemed lost. The years passed and their lives took an unexpected turn. The man who had once been consumed by pride and selfishness had truly changed. He proved that real change is possible as long as you have the determination. Olivia Parker, who had once carried so much disappointment in her heart, now saw a rebirth in her husband. He was no longer just a companion. He was a true partner in every sense of the word. He had become the embodiment of empathy, commitment, and unconditional love. Gradually, step by step, Olivia Parker let the walls around her heart crumble, rediscovering the man who had once made her believe in shared dreams. Their son Theodore, named after Olivia's father, who had always believed in second chances, grew up in a home filled with love. Lucas Harris was Ethan's inspiration, present in every moment, from his son's first steps to his little victories every day, from sleepless nights, caring for the baby, to bedtime stories and impromptu games in the yard. All these moments became part of their life, and Lucas embraced them with joy and gratitude. The couple held a vow renewal ceremony, a simple one attended only by their closest loved ones. They didn't just celebrate their love, they celebrated the journey that had led them here. Theodore, his eyes shining with pride, held the ring in his hand, symbolizing a new beginning, one built on their joint efforts. The home they had created was now filled with laughter and the valuable lessons from their past, becoming a solid foundation for a stronger relationship where respect and care always guided their decisions. Olivia Parker knew she had made the right choice when she opened her heart to change. Ethan Harris, though never forgetting to show his love through the small actions every day, had proven that a second chance was the greatest gift he had ever received. Their happiness was quiet but powerful, not built on perfection, but on love, atonement, and a deep understanding of what truly mattered. Together they wrote a new story, proving that sometimes forgiveness opens the door to an extraordinary future. If you were Ethan Harris, what would you do to fix the mistakes from your past? Would you have the courage to change? Share your thoughts in the comments. Your story might inspire others. If you found this story meaningful, don't forget to share it with your friends and loved ones. Thank you for watching and supporting. Wishing you strength and success. The stories are collected from various sources and do not represent any individual or organization. They are shared with the intention of spreading human values in life and have been rewritten with the support of AI. If there are any mistakes, kindly overlook them with understanding. Wishing you all the best in life.